This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
Caroline and I got married in May of 2000, and one of our parents' gifts to us was to gift us one of those like American airline package trips to Maui. You know, where you have to sit through the person on the on like the afternoon of the first day and does the spiel and tries to sell you on all the things you can do, and for that you got a slightly discounted airfare. And because we figured, Caroline knowing she married a minister, that we might never be to Hawaii again, we did everything. We were like, here's our signature, here's our card, there's no money on it, just take it and put us on all the things. But the one thing we had already done was we had been told to do the sunrise at the top of the volcano and ride down on your bike on the volcano. You go through like 7 climate zones as gravity just takes you down. You only do the brakes, you don't pedal, right? And I'm thinking about that particular piece of our trip right now. So we had been given this wisdom that because you're already all messed up on time zones, you should do that the first morning, because they pick you up at 3:45 in the morning to drive you up to the top of the volcano. So picture us, okay, we get married, we have a reception. We stay at the reception for a while, but we won't talk about that. Then we go home, we change, we go to an airport hotel because no fancy hotel for us, because we have a really early flight in the morning. And then because it's Chicago, we get in a traffic jam at 1 in the morning on the road to the hotel. We get into the hotel, and Caroline, who is the Uber laundry, Uber accountant, everything in the right place, it's like, oh my gosh, there aren't even towels, and I think these sheets are dirty. So we're having to like call down. Now it's like 2:30 in the morning. Call down and actually get towels and you know, do all the things. We get on the airplane. We fly over to Maui. We stumble into the next hotel, a little bit nicer hotel. We get in. We go to sleep. Somewhere, I vaguely recall, they knock on the door. And I go, and they're like, here's your complimentary champagne, which I then shattered all in our floor because I am mostly asleep. Too asleep to really wake up and not, you know, anyway. Doesn't matter. Caroline doesn't like champagne anyway. So I'm like, thank you, all over the place. They cleaned it up. We go back to sleep. We get on that car ride. We drive up there. And it is brutally cold. Brutally cold. I mean, you think you're in Hawaii, but you might as well be at Denali. It is cold. And the wind is whipping. And maybe someone gave you a video camera for your wedding. Kids, you don't even know what that is, but it's got little bitty tapes that don't play on anything. And maybe you filmed for an hour like this, waiting for the sun to come up, hypothetically. And it gets colder. Actually, it's colder as the sun's about to crest. And we and 50 of our closest friends, and you know how much I love that, are just waiting at this railing for that sun to come up. And then it does. And I swear that first ray of sunlight flashed across the universe. And it was beautiful. And I'm a night person, so it may have been the only sunrise I've ever seen.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
And I felt at that moment, and with that whole journey to that moment, the feeling like I was looking God eye to eye. Have you had that feeling? Have you been somewhere, someplace, something in the presence of some person
This is a
for
demonstration of
whom you
Wirecast.
just had this moment where you said, oh, I could just freeze the world here because I am one with the universe. I want you to conjure that right now. I want you to close your eyes. A la Christine, close your eyes, close your ears, close your nose, not literally, so that you can call that memory
of Wirecast.
to yourself. Make that memory present to yourself. Feel that feeling as much as you can, wherever it is you are, who it is that you're with. What is it that just kind of came up out of nowhere and embraced you in goosebump causing awe?
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
That moment, wherever you are right now, whoever you're with right now, whatever you're doing right now, that's the moment the psalmist writes this psalm about this feeling. My soul longs for you, thirsts for you, O God.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
Historically, one of the Psalms of Zion, we imagine this is a pilgrimage song. This is the song that you sing when you've been on your long and winding road, when you've made family sacrifice, personal sacrifice, to go to abide in a space with God particularly strongly. The God who is everywhere, but the God who is most definitely there. And you've been wandering and you've made sacrifices and you're yearning and you're leaning in to the sunrise that doesn't seem to want to come, and it keeps getting colder. And then you crest the horizon and you can see the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, and everything becomes worth it.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
Everything falls into place for a moment. We call that feeling mountaintop experience for our sense out of our own Jewish heritage and our scriptural heritage of understanding that God particularly dwelt on the mountain, right? These mountains that pierced the heavens. And here, particularly, be it the Transfiguration or the giving of the Ten Commandments, we came to gaze at God. And the psalmist gives rise to that in Psalm 84. And Solomon beckons on that feeling in this prayer in which he is dedicating the temple. Right? These people have wandered. Right? They met their God in the wastes of famine. They followed their God through travail and providential providing to Egypt. They languished over the oppression of the economy in Egypt that made them work and work and work and see not the yield of their own hands. They yearned for God to make sense of it all. And then they wandered in the wilderness. They failed to trust. They learned to trust. They forgot trust. They lived in this give and take. They spilled the champagne all over the floor. Oops. And in the by, they build an ark and a tabernacle. They come to understand that this God is on this pilgrimage with them, and they need these things as a tangible reminder to the awesomeness of God that is too ubiquitous to behold. How do you see oxygen? You take it for granted because it's just there until you don't have it. And by the by, they yearn when they find the promised land to make a marker. This people who made markers and altars throughout the wilderness to mark the places that they saw God. These thin moments where God interceded on their behalf, or where God wrestled with them into a new future. And they wanted now in this new place to mark particularly the presence of God here, now, with us. And they had to wait a generation, and finally Solomon gets to build the temple, and he comes to designate this place as particularly God's house. And this prayer is fascinating because in that movement from verse 26 to 27, and I could be off by one. Cut me a break here. In this movement of understanding that God is particularly in this place, but God is also so big that it is but a minuscule part of God's presence that is here. And I love, this came up at first light. Sai said he loves that God's presence in the temple is so felt that the priests couldn't even get in there to say anything. They got a short sermon that day. Not much quiets priests and preachers. But God's presence is so palpable. They have a word for this. They call it glory. The glory of the Lord is so physically heavy in this space, they couldn't even get in. And Solomon says, as amazing as that is, this is but the top millimeter of the ocean of God's being. This is like gazing up at the stars, to quote Mike Larson earlier today. Gazing up at the stars and knowing that for all the millions of stars you can see, between two dots in the sky, there are more stars you can't see than that you can see.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
And the psalmist wants to capture this awe and majesty of God, that feeling of the sun finally breaking the unbreakable horizon. The feeling of the Holy of Holies, where God's presence is so manifest, we cannot break into it. And understand that
this is a demonstration of
that
Wirecast.
God knows your name. That God longs, thirsts for you. We Protestants are an iconoclastic people. We shed all those things like temples and majesty and awe. I had this conversation recently. The senior center sent a group of seniors over because they were taking tours of churches, and I got to take a tour. I'd give them a tour of this space and talk a little about who we are and what we are. And it's like, oh yeah, Calvin would not worship here. This is a very ostentatious place for him, right? We Reformed people, we don't do cathedrals and temples because we imagine that somewhere in all that human majesty, we forgot that it's about God. God.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
But I think we lose something when we lose the temple. I think we lose that God's majesty is amazing. and we lose that sense of coming into a space heavy, pregnant with the divine. Not that God isn't elsewhere,
Of Wirecast.
but that God is most particularly here. Not that God doesn't want to be your friend and in companionship and relationship, but oh yeah, get your shoes off, my friends, because you're on holy ground. And you have to respect that. And I think we lose the sense that what we're doing, my wife is cringing because I just threw my shoes off. I think we lose the sense that we're here, having left at 3 a.m. to pilgrimage to a place to await the sun breaking the horizon and feel the tender mercy of God break forth like the dawn. And I think we need to attend to that, because without feeding that spiritual longing in ourselves, we aren't whole. Solomon understood that. Israel yearned for that. I think in our lives, if you watched my sermon teaser, I'm a believer in our levels of being. That we have a physical body. We can't help but forget that, right? My physical body is... Christine's learning. I keep getting up, and she goes, "Are you okay?" It's like, I just groan when I wake up. Like, get up out of a seat, right? Like, sorry, that's just like Andrew at 48, right? So I'll go like, ugh, and she's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm fine." That's normal. I can't help but be present to my physical body, but I have a physical reality, right? And then I have an emotional reality, right? The emotions of my being. And our emotional realities don't all work the same, just like our physical bodies don't. I worked with a good friend. He was bipolar. The chemical reality of his body, which I'll mention in a moment, altered the emotional reality of his body. And the things that my body could just do naturally, if I'm really excited and I'm high on my endorphins, my body chemically knows how to correct for that and bring me back to even keeled on most days. But his couldn't. And the only way his body chemically knew how to correct for that was to go to a really deep, dark place.
This is a demonstration
we have
of
a
Wirecast.
Physical reality, and a chemical reality, and an emotional reality, and an intellectual reality. I'm one of those kids who was always told my head was divorced from my heart, that I lived too much in my head. Anyone heard that before? Come on, hands up. We're Presbyterians. I'm pretty sure most of you got told that at one point in time, right? And I didn't have the vocabulary with which to reject that diagnosis, but I am someone who loves to live in my intellectual self, and my intellectual self is deeply tied to my emotional self. So we have physical realities, chemical realities, emotional realities, intellectual realities, and we have a spiritual reality. Whether you're Christian, or whether you're Buddhist, or whether you're Jewish, or whether you're Islamic, or whether you're Hindu, or whether you are living in some place I don't know how to name, in a culture I don't know, I can almost guarantee you, based on the data work of anthropologists and sociologists, that you have a spiritual reality. You have a quest and a yearning to name the divine, and a yearning to create ritual to connect with that divine sense. And my feeling is that most of us, most of the time, don't attend to our spiritual reality. Because we have demysticized our world. We have torn down our temples. We have explained it with science.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
And I'm not against any of those things, because I actually believe that wholeness only comes when we integrate all those things. When Andrew's intellectual self is in touch with Andrew's emotional self. And I believe because I wouldn't do what I do for a living if I didn't. That our spiritual self is what ties these things together, is what keeps us from being
This is
four
a
different
demonstration
people
of
in one
Wirecast.
person's physical reality. And so, Solomon dedicates a space to say, oh God, who we can encounter at Bogus Basin, at the ocean side, or in ancient caverns, here gathers to meet you this day. Come and drink
This is a
in the
demonstration
divine
of Wirecast.
presence that yearns to make you whole. That yearns for you to attend to the God-shaped hole in your heart and say, Andrew, what is it that I am longing for today? And be honest before God and one
This is a
another.
demonstration of
with that
Wirecast.
longing. Oh, my friends, my siblings, my fellow wanderers, it is good to be here with you today. This is the word of the Lord.